When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
Experience a membership that backs what you're building with American Express Business Platinum. Unlock over $3,500 in business and travel value annually with statement credits on select purchases from brands like Dell, Hilton, and Adobe, and other benefits. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Based on total potential value of statement credits on select purchases and other benefits, enrollments required, monthly and other limits and terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
No one goes to Hank's for his spreadsheets. They go for a darn good pizza. Lately, though, the shop's been quiet, so Hank decides to bring back the $1 slice. He asks Copilot in Microsoft Excel to look at his sales and costs and help him see if he can afford it. Copilot shows Hank where the money's going and which little extras make the dollar slice work. Now Hank has a line out the door. Hank makes the pizza, Copilot handles the spreadsheets. Learn more at m365copilot.com/work.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn. Welcome to How We're the podcast. And you join us the morning after the day before, which can only mean it's Sunday supplement, except when we play it on Sunday and it's our Monday supplement. But never mind all that, because the national headlines have all been about Manchester United's failure to score as Sunderland became the first side to shut them out and keep a clean sheet against them in the league this season. And even though we made the third top scorers in the league look pretty toothless in the 90 minutes that Sunderland dominated, once again, the national headlines seem to revolve around how United should have won it at the end. So luckily for all of us, we have a couple of gentlemen who might be able to talk us through the action properly. And first up, we don't have Andrew Smithson, like I thought we did, because we have Johnny Hawley. Hello, Johnny.
Yes, very good morning. It's strange being me, but not being Andrew, because I was convinced I was going to wake up 6'5" and living in Sunderland and with one of the smoothest voices in all the podcasting. So I'm a bit disappointed, if anything, really.
Well, you see, I was going to coordinate with you and I was going to get you to I was going to introduce you as Andrew and you could do a little impression of him to start with and see how good it would go. But I couldn't be bothered, I'm completely honest.
You might be overestimating my abilities to do an Andrew impersonation as well, I think. Listeners might see through it in about 0.3 seconds. So
I'm giggling at the thought of you trying it anyway, Johnny. But yeah, it was a drizzly, overcast day. You look at it and... a goalless draw, but actually probably one of the best goalless draws I've seen in a long time, Johnny.
yeah, absolutely. It's living proof that a 0-0 scoreline doesn't tell you anything about the quality of the game. I thought it was a really, really good performance. Obviously, we'll get into it in plenty of detail over the course of the pod, but just like instant impressions were like, half-time and full-time. Half-time, I was, turning to my dad and going, that's one of the best we've played all season, that. Which to say it was 0-0, I think tells you something. And then full-time, we're coming away bit disappointed, which from a fixture like that, the classic, if you told us last May you'd be coming away from a draw at Man United thinking we should have won that game, would have been, I don't know what I'd have thought. I'd have thought you were definitely on some sort of substances. But it was a great game, really enjoyed it, like obviously disappointed, but enjoyable football to watch, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only kind of getting a goalless draw against them, but making them look pretty average while we're doing it as well. But also joining us is someone who we really hope was nice and snug under cover at the back of the stand there during one of the wettest days for a while on Wearside, because it definitely wasn't a weekend for sitting in the first few rows at the Stadium of Light, because we're very glad to have BBC Radio Newcastle's Nick Barnes with us. Hello, Nick.
Hi. Yes, nice and snug. I'd say dry, but not warm. It was freezing yesterday. I couldn't believe it was May. It felt like the middle of winter.
Yeah, we were just talking beforehand. I remember a game against Arsenal in 1991 where Brian Moore and Jimmy Greaves were all wrapped up in blankets and gloves and scarves and hats and all sorts on the crow's nest at the on the clock stand at Roker Park. So I assume you're very glad to be where you are and to be as far away as possible from that wind blowing the rain in at the stadium, like Nick.
Yeah, we're blessed that we are. We might be at a disadvantage because we're so high up, but we are an advantage that we've got the roof right over us and there's no leaks. So at least we do stay dry during a game. So there are advantages. And talking of 0-0s, do you remember back at Old Trafford? I'm trying to remember which season it was, but Sunderland played out a 0-0 with Manchester United, and did it not deny them the title as a result of that game? I'm just trying to think back. It was back in the 2000s, but it might have been when Kevin Ball was in caretaker charge, I think, possibly. But they played 0-0 at Old Trafford and denied United.
We had a couple. I'm sure we had a couple of goalless draws actually, because I'm vaguely remembering Jurgen Macho, but I don't know whether he had a blinder at Old Trafford and Anfield within the short space of time or something like that. But anyway, you kind of forget games against Manchester United because you just assume we kind of just get beat kind of or even at the last minute. But Nick, just before we get into the football, I just wanted to quiz you on this because it's been a story that's been kind of rumbling during the week, and I thought I wanted to kind of pick your brains on it to start with. There's been a lot of stories about the owners potentially selling up, which has been strange, and the club released a bit of a strange statement where they said they didn't say we're not selling, they just said they're planning for next season and they're preparing for next season. But when you look at it, that for myself looking at it and reading bits and pieces, I just would not be surprised if this was the time that Kyril Louis-Dreyfus decided to sell up, because he's took the club from League One to the Premier League. He's established them as a Premier League club. They've made that initial investment. And as a pure business plan, Nick, you would think that this is the ideal time, because to move on to the next step is going to cost a ridiculous amount of money.
It's interesting because a few people asked me about this at the game, and I had a couple of discussions about that very thing. Is this the good time to sell the club? And I think the general consensus is this is the season. If you're going to sell the club, this is the season you do it. The value of the club's gone up exponentially since Kyril and Juan and the others got involved with it. The value of the club as a Premier League club obviously is, it must be in the hundreds of millions now compared to the tens of millions that they bought the club or paid for the club. And I also think if you look at the processes that are going on behind the scenes in terms of appointing a chief executive, they've got an interim chief executive now who is in overall charge, as I understand, of everything that the club is running, but is not going to be the permanent chief executive, which sort of suggests that this is the time that the club is available, if you like, because if someone else comes in, they will probably want to appoint their own people. So you've got a situation where the club's in limbo. It's theoretically the good time to sell, and its value will be probably at its highest, because we don't know how tough next season's going to be, how much money will have to be spent, and so on. So there is a strong argument that now is the time to sell. But I guess the other side of the coin is that a football club is always for sale. If someone comes along with the right offer and good money, then as an owner, you would look at it and you could be tempted to sell. So I suspect there's a bit of probably a little bit of both in what's happening at the moment. The club's always for sale. Is this a good time to sell? Probably. Are there interested parties? Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, Jonny, just of course as a fan, I don't know what your thoughts are on it, because we do previews every week. We speak to the people who are doing similar things to us about all sorts of teams in the Premier League, and you look at your Fulhams, you look at your Palaces, you look at your Brightons, Bournemouths, and I mean, even when you look at what's happening with Wolves this season, West Ham, Spurs, that, a couple of transfer windows and, there's a risk that you lose everything in terms of finances and you go down. So that risk reward in the Premier League, that you spend a fortune just to keep afloat in mid-table, that the investment that you need to try and kick on and become established in the top six is, you're competing against nations essentially, in terms of your Manchester Cities and things like that. So, when you look at it like that, Kirill Louis-Dreyfus would, if you just look at it a pure business point of view, he'd be sensible thinking, well, at the very least, we need investment.
Investment, yeah, I think that's an avenue that I would imagine they're exploring. I mean, as Nick says, a football club's always for sale, isn't it? There's no discrete period of time where they go, okay, now we're for sale and now we're off the market. Just doesn't happen. Investment's something that I think they will be looking into, and I think they should, because you've rightly said, it is literally nation state you're competing with at the top end of this division. We've seen, even if you do get taken over by a nation state, it doesn't always necessarily lead to the happiest of results, as we've seen up the road. And even a club like Aston Villa, who have, a really big, historically massive club, pardon me, great pedigree, even they've had to appoint essentially like one of just the best managers in the world at the moment in Unai Emery, who they've also had to cede almost total control of the club to, in order to, give themselves that impetus to go on and try and challenge to crack that top six. And even then they're struggling. They keep running into financial limits every season. It feels like we're having articles come out about how Villa are, right up against those restrictions, and they've got to sell, or they're cooking up these insane loan deals every season to try and bolster the squad without falling foul of it. So I think it goes without saying that we'd need investment to kick on, but I really hope they're not looking at selling. I mean, Kirill Louis-Dreyfus is a young man as well. He's only a year older than me, which is ridiculous, because if I owned Sunderland, we'd not be doing this well in the Premier League. I can tell you that for free.
Johnny.
But I think, he's got a lot of time left in football if he wants to be involved with it. So I would imagine that there's no rush from him to be desperate to get out of it. I would imagine he's enjoying his time still at Sunderland. I mean, I don't know the bloke, so I can't say that for sure, but I don't see necessarily why he would walk away, unless obviously somebody chucks several billion quid at him, and then it's probably quite difficult to say no. But certainly, if, from a fan's point of view, to copy Richard Keys, it's very much a be careful what you wish for, because you won't find as many owners as good as Kirill Louis-Dreyfus knocking around the Premier League who would show the level of investment in the club and the region, not just monetarily, but also, we've all talked at length, haven't we, on plenty of these shows about the different, initiatives and the kit deals and just everything. It feels like the club's as connected as it's ever been. And I think the ownership plays a massive part in that. And, we've seen in the not too distant past what happens when we get it wrong. So I wouldn't be in any sort of rush to try and repeat those situations. No, thank you.
I read an interesting article yesterday about West Ham. When David Sullivan and Karen Brady moved from Upton Park to the London Stadium, they described West Ham, we no longer want to be a tin pot club. We're going to be giants in football. And 10 years on, here you are facing relegation to the Championship. And David Sullivan's ownership is described as listless. And they compare West Ham to Brentford, Bournemouth, Brighton, all who've got clear identities, clear structures, and of now competing for Champions League football. And that's the danger, that you have owners that feel that they don't need to invest, they don't manage the club, they don't have a structure to the football club. And West Ham's a prime example of that. And look where they may end up almost certainly now, because it looks like Tottenham will probably escape relegation again this season. And it's catastrophic, the millions that it's going to cost West Ham United, and you'd have to say the ill-fated move to the London Stadium, because that stadium is not a football stadium, never has been and never will be. So at least Sunderland, and they talk about identity in this article, how Brentford and those clubs have got identity, and that's where Sunderland are at the moment. They've got an identity, they've got a culture, they've got a connection with the supporter base at the moment. It's a fine line. It can easily dissipate because, now we've gone into FCR and it's all driven by revenue. Those things can, there's fine lines and fine margins, as Liverpool have found with their ticket fiasco, over the last couple of seasons, and they've had to do U-turns, much like Sunderland have done this season, over the ticketing. So it's I spoke to someone at Wolves last week as well, because Wolves, I think, are the only club now owned by Chinese owners. Because
The bottom fell out of Chinese investment, didn't it?
yeah,
In football?
exactly. And do you remember when everyone was going to China to play football?
Yeah,
The Chinese were buying up.
It was China, it was Russia, and now
Yeah.
it's Saudi, and
So it's really interesting to see it's the Americans now are the prime buyers, if you like, of English football clubs. But that bubble will probably burst at some point as well. So I think Sunderland are blessed to have someone like Kirill and Juan and those individual owners at the moment, because they're not in football for the whims of a particular market. They are solo owners, and that's a strong place to be, I think.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one to watch. And Johnny did remind me that it is something to remember that Kirill Louis-Dreyfus spent his 20s dragging Sunderland from League One to the Premier League, whereas I spent my 20s watching far too much sport and drinking far too much Guinness.
I was going to say, I spent my 20s crying about Sunderland being in League One. He spent his 20s getting us out of them. So it's duality of man on display there.
Yeah. Yeah. And incidentally, I spent my teens and my 30s watching too much sport and drinking too much Guinness as well. But anyway, moving on. We'll get into the game, because we'll get into the starting lineup. And I want to start with you, Nick, because I think there was a big shock in the starting 11 because Ballard, of course, with that suspension. I think everybody assumed that there'd be a rejig, whether it was O'Nien coming in and how that would work, whether it was Che Hume slotting in, whether Angulo might be fit enough to start. And it was actually Hertrauder who came in at fullback. And I think if everybody guessed their starting 11 or tried to second guess what Lebris would do, this would probably be the final option on everyone's list, wouldn't it, Nick?
Well, it surprised me, and it surprised me because at the press conference on Thursday, I asked Regis about Hertrauder. Was this an opportunity to play him, bearing in mind he's not had a huge amount of football? But what we've seen him in it, I've been quite impressed by him. And he said it's an option, but I felt then probably not, because he's a loanee. And then the story came out from Sky Germany that he's not staying. He's not probably going to stay at Leipzig either. So I thought, if that's true, then Hertrauder's he's not going to be in his plans. He's not going to be in the squad next season. So you give the opportunity to one of his regulars, if you like. And I thought Hume would drop back to right back, Michele go into the central positions. And I thought, like you, an Angulo or Rig or someone would play right-sided. So I was surprised to see Hertrauder in the starting lineup. And I'm slightly sort of, is that Sky Germany story true? Because when I asked Regis about Hertrauder's future on Thursday, so it's too early to say. So maybe they are going to realign themselves, if you like, with Hertrauder in the summer. I don't know, but I have to say I was surprised to see him in the starting 11.
Yeah. I mean, it was a strange one, Johnny, because like I said, we were expecting anything else. And I made the point during the week that when you consider, I think it was reported that it was something like £18.5 million or something was the deal that was agreed on at the start of the season. Now, if you look in today's market, at what the prices international defenders are going for, it's maybe twice that for quite a lot of them. And I was talking about the situation with Luke O'Nien. Now, we'd all have him at Sunderland for as long as Luke O'Nien wants to be at Sunderland, because of course, not only is he a good player, but he saves people at the side of roads and all that sort of stuff. So we'd like him to stay forever. But if Luke O'Nien said, "Look, I'd like to play 40 games in the Championship or whatever," everybody would say, "Brilliant," and he would go on his terms. And if he decided to do that, fair play to him. But then we need another defender. And the deal for if we didn't know, if we hadn't seen Hertrauder this season and we signed him in the summer for 18 million, everyone would think it was a steal, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's something that it's similar to a point I've made about Dennis Irkin a few times this season, where I've said that I'd be renewing his contract as long as he wanted to stay, because the money you'd have to spend to bring in somebody of a similar type of profile to fill his role in the squad, because we're in the Premier League now, you are, unless your scouting team does an exceptional job, which, okay, ours might, but barring that, you're paying, 15, 20 plus million, even for rotation options and backup players. So from that point of view, the money that we'd be spending on Hertrauder, I think it would be a no-brainer. And to be honest, I think I've maybe been a bit harsh on him at times this season, Hertrauda, where I just haven't really kind of got him as a player. I never quite saw what I think other people were seeing. You know, I think he played against Man City earlier in the season, played really well. And, you know, I was like, okay, he was decent, but I just wasn't quite seeing where he'd fit into the team. But his last two starts being obviously yesterday and the away derby, he was brilliant in both games, wasn't he? And he started right back of a four both times, which I think has probably helped him because that's probably his main position, I would say. Certainly where he's played the majority of his senior football. So having now seen, and you can't call it a run of games because it's two starts, you know, a couple of months apart, but he has definitely shown enough to the point where I'd be fully confident if he was in our squad next season that he'd be contributing from day one. So at that point, I mean, as Nick says, you know, there's reports from Germany, then the club saying a different thing. Obviously, you know, Labris and the club can't come out and start saying, well, we sat down with Lucharel and here's what we talked about and here's a big list of his demands and, you know, it's not going to happen. So who knows what's going on behind the scenes? I mean, if his head's been turned, obviously there was the Liverpool interest in January and, you know, there may be conversations happening between certain parties behind the scenes and things already getting put in place. You know, who knows? But if he feels like he could stay and make a bit of a go of it at Sunderland, I'd be signing him in the summer. The deal's already agreed as well, which takes a lot of the hassle out of the process. You know, how much do we hear about, you know, football transfers are so complicated and fast moving and, you know, things are kind of, you know, everyone's flying by the seat of the pants a little bit, you know, to get things over the line. Whereas if we could have one that we can essentially just pull the trigger on, you know, it would be a bit of a no-brainer. But yeah, it definitely shocked me that he started because, again, to go back to something Nick said, I think if you've got a player who you don't know is going to be here next season, it's difficult to prioritise him over other members of the squad. And I think we saw that with Dan Neil in the first half of the season, where there were times you were thinking, well, surely Neil could come on for 20 minutes here or, you know, maybe get the odd start. But I think the club just took the view that, look, if you're not committed and you're not here for the long term, we've got to develop people who are. And probably in the long run, you'd say they've got that right. Certainly more often than not, if not every time. So I trust the club, but I would definitely be wanting to see Gertrude stay.
Yeah, and we'll get into his performance as we get into the game, because let's get into the game. And absolutely blistering start, Nick. I thought as soon as kickoff was taken, you saw the pattern of the game. We almost pinned Manchester United in, and they sat deep. I don't know whether that was. I was trying to decide whether that was a game plan for Manchester United early on, or whether it was just our high press and that we'd forced them back. But after 4 minutes, you know, Talby played the ball into Lafay. Nice touch from Lafay back, and Talby curled one just past the far post. A couple of minutes later, Siddiqui took out 4 Manchester United midfielders in the middle of the park, played the ball into Brobby to Enzo Lafay, and Lafay played Siddiqui through on goal. And, you know, on another day, we go 1 or even 2-0 up after 6 minutes. But it was brilliant to see us coming out the blocks like that. And it seemed like early on, the orchestrator was Enzo Lafay, didn't it?
I think looking at that start yesterday and thinking back through the season, I think that's one of the best starts I've seen Sunderland make in a game, certainly at home. And no coincidence, Lafay is involved in it. I think I love him. I think he's a fantastic player. And it's remarkable when you go back through the goals that Sunderland have scored this season, and it's not a huge amount, but 9 times out of 10, Lafay's involved somewhere in it. If it's not an assist, that he's involved in the passing at some stage in the moves that have led to goals. And he's now in his favourite position, playing as a 10, playing in the middle. And that start yesterday, some of the football was mesmerising. I thought, this is brilliant football. And you could really see, you know, Reggie Stabis always talks about his triangles. And you could see the triangles clearly across the pitch, and the way that they moved, they swept up the field in triangles. And I thought, what started, if they could have got a goal in that opening 15, 20 minutes, it'd been very, very interesting to see how the game would have panned out. Because I thought it was brilliant. It was fantastic football to watch. And you were talking earlier about 0-0 draw. Sounds like, oh, that must have been dull. No, not at all. It's the opposite, because the football was so good. Some of the touches, some of the movement was brilliant. And it's just, in the end, it's down to the final decision, that final pass or that final ball, which we could talk about all season. You know, Talby's had quite a few opportunities, and he's just been let down by the wrong decision or just not striking the ball sweetly enough. But I loved it. I thought it was fantastic to watch.
Yeah. I mean, Johnny, like Nick said, that football was fantastic, and we talked about Enzo Lefebvre. I mean, is this a game that seals the deal for that he should be in the middle of the park, because he's been out on the left hand side? I've kind of tried to start a debate whether it was it his positioning, was it the fact he was on the left hand side, or was it just the fact we didn't get him the ball, or because did he have license to roam, but we weren't in a position to give him it because it was the level of performance or whatever. In this game, we came out the blocks and we made sure he was involved, didn't we?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you touched on it, I think, when you were just asking the question, basically, which is whether he plays on the left, whether he plays in the middle, we need to get him the ball. And there have been too many games this season where we've really struggled to do that. Now, obviously, sometimes that's because the Premier League is an extremely hard league and there are other teams who are trying to stop you playing. You know, as much as Lebris can lay the best plans in the world in training, come Saturday or Sunday or whatever, you've got 11 blokes in a different colour strip who are trying to get in your face. But yeah, yesterday was an example of a game where we really did play to his strengths a lot. And I thought you could really tell that compared to earlier in the season where I think, because Nick, you were mentioning the triangles, and I fully agree. But the key thing was so many of those triangles, those little 5 or 10 yard passes forward were almost the first option. It was forward and then you might, play it out wide and then you can start progressing. But those little balls that were just breaking the lines and getting us that little bit up the pitch, in a weird way, it's the kind of job Patrick Roberts used to do for us by dribbling, where he'd just get the ball and then suddenly you're 20, 30 yards up the pitch and you can pen teams in a bit. Whereas I thought we did that by passing the ball around Man United at times, which was it's ridiculous to be able to say that, really, isn't it? As a promoted team, we're passing Man United off the park at times, who were third in the league. Mental. But that was like I say, I think that was an improved sign from us. And part of that massively played into Lefebvre, because he's the kind of player, when he is in that sort of 10 position, in that pocket of space between defence and midfield, the opposition defence and midfield, I mean, he's able to receive the ball, turn, and sometimes he can turn and he almost doesn't even move the ball, which I know sounds daft, but so many players, if they turn, the sort of dragging the ball with the feet, they can be tackled, they can be challenged. He's able to protect the ball so nicely in those areas, which means he's able to receive the ball from somebody 10 yards further back, turn, and then get us 10 yards up, or slip one in for Brobby, or slip one in for Diarra. And that's what his absolute best is, Lefebvre, for me. His best attribute is his ability to knit that play between midfield and the front line, because those players, they're worth the weight in gold. How many years have we been crying out for that sort of player who's able to unpick a defence, play that final pass? Now, yes, at times, okay, Lefebvre himself will make the wrong decision. That's part and parcel of football. Bruno Fernandes just won the Player of the Year, FWA Player of the Year award, and he probably wastes the ball more than anyone in the league as well, because he's constantly trying stuff. So you accept that. But then the drawback, obviously, is Lefebvre's playing all these passes and he's being excellent knitting it together. Again, as Nick said, it's just that last pass or that last decision that we're, as a team, as a unit, we're not getting right often enough. I said yesterday to me, again, I turned to my dad and I said, between both boxes, we look absolutely world class here. It's just as soon as we get into the box, that's when the same old issues are coming back up every time. But we're a young team. That'll come. It's nobody was ever going to expect us to, or nobody should have expected us to turn up this season and be able to put together a complete team who've got no weaknesses. That was never going to happen. Even the team who were going to win the Premier League, whether it's Arsenal or Man City, they've got obvious weaknesses, both of them. So that's part and parcel of it. But yeah, I thought the way that we played was brilliant. It was one of the best we've played, to say that we only drew the game. And Enzo Lefebvre was absolutely critical to that. And just to finally put a full stop on it, I agree with you now. I think he has to play centrally going forward. I've defended him playing out wide, and sometimes it's been a case in needs must, but whenever possible now, he's got to be in that position, because that is where he's going to do the most damage.
Yeah. I mean, Nick, just in terms of the team development and kicking on, there's a couple of things I wanted to bring up with you. We've talked about that final, I suppose, act, whether it's the shot, whether it's the right pass, whatever that is. And we're remembering how young the likes of Siddiqui is, how young the likes of Talbi is, and to do what we've done this season, where those players, we can clearly see that they do have weaknesses in their game, and this is their first season in the Premier League and we've finished mid-table. I mean, sometimes we have to remind ourselves of that fact. And just that, obviously, they will hopefully develop in their second season in the Premier League. The other thing I wanted to raise with you about development is we've got the worst stats in the Premier League in terms of scoring from corners. And during this period, I think we had 3 corners in succession, I think, around this time, that when we were building up the pressure. None of them came to a goal. Surely, with the players we've got, with your Diarras, with your Alderetes, Michele's, Ballards, of course, we've got to be disappointed with that, haven't we?
Yeah, I agree. Quickly on Lefay, the other thing he does is defend as well. He gets back.
Yeah.
He's prepared to work and get back, and he's often as not in or around the penalty area, clearing up, tidying up, and doing that work as well, doing the horrible side of the job. But I agree with you exactly on the set piece. And those corners, the third one I think that Lefay took was dreadful. It just drove it in, to the near post, and it was cleared. And I think we were talking about this the other week about set pieces, that defending them, taking set pieces. It is a bit of a weak area for Sunderland. They don't exploit Ballard's height enough. They don't exploit Michele's height enough. Alderete can put himself in and around the penalty area as well. And I don't think you look at how many goals we scored from set pieces, and it's not many. I mean, I know Alderete got one at Forest, didn't he, earlier in the season, but I think they should be getting more. I think there should be more from Sunderland in that area. And as a team developing, it's quite interesting because I've been talking about this looking to next season. And Reggie Breeze said this week that he would expect next season, in his first game, that there'll be 8 players from the current squad starting the game next season, which is quite a high number. Bearing in mind there's going to be recruitment in the summer and maybe 1 or 2 leave. So the squad's developing, but I think it's an interesting development because he refers back now that the start of next season, the squad will have had 38 games experience in the Premier League. So that's the sort of blueprint going forward, as those players now have played that number of games and know what the Premier League's about. And likewise, other teams will know what Sunderland are about. But I think one thing that we've lacked to a degree this season is Premier League experience. I think there's only 2 players, Xhaka and Traore, who've got Premier League experience. And Traore's not played that many games, so it's fallen on Xhaka. And we know how influential he's been in the team this season. And a lot of that is because he's played in this league before. He knows what it's all about. He's a leader. He commands a presence in midfield. And now, you'd hope that the players, they are young, but they've got a season's experience in the Premier League. And that's going to be invaluable next season for this young squad going forwards. And I think the last few weeks, the teams look much more rounded and much more balanced, with Lefay in the middle. And what they will need to do next season is get this wingers situation sorted out, because that's been one of the Achilles heels as well this season. They've never had any consistency on the wings. How many players have Sunderland played on the wings this season? I think it's into double figures. So that is an area I think they need to nail next season.
It's all right, because one of our new wingers was on the pitch yesterday anyway. We all know that.
Yeah. Well, and there was a brilliant moment in the second half down the left wing, and he kept the ball in on the goal line. And when I thought that was a lost cause, I thought that's gone. And that was a moment. That was another moment of magic in the game, which is brilliant.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back onto the winger situation, but actually, just very quickly, Jonny, because you brought them up, or you brought Ahmad up. I just thought it was quite funny. There was an incident on around 10 minutes when actually Man United was probably their first shot on goal, I imagine. But we talked to Carl Anker for the preview, who was brilliant telling us about Manchester United. I thought this was really interesting because he had a free kick right on the edge of the box and Fernandes was standing over it. And of course, he's trying to get the assist record for the Premier League, and all the Man United fans, players are talking about it. And he stepped up for this free kick, which every day of the week he's going to shoot. And he lays it off to Ahmad on the edge of the box. And I just thought, hang on, Man United at this point aren't really interested in scoring. They're interested in getting Fernandes on the ball to get an assist. But actually, just generally, I mean, the lads talked about it in the pubcast, but Xerxes, I thought, apart from the odd flash, Ahmad was very poor. I thought he was looking for, I think he wanted to have a red and white strip on, didn't he?
Yeah,
Really, but
Agent Ahmad, to give him his full name.
but they were poor, and that moment kind of summed what Man United were actually thinking about, wasn't it?
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. I thought they looked really disjointed. It was a sign to me. Now, look, like most people listening to this podcast, mainly I watch Sunderland. I do watch a lot of football, but mainly I watch us, right? So I don't watch a lot of full Man United games. So you see the results and you watch the highlights and, they're scoring some thrilling goals and they're winning some great games. I mean, they beat Liverpool last weekend. You can quibble about Seshko's goal and whether it should have stood, but, they've been picking up the results. But obviously that was the first time that I've properly sat down and watched them, certainly like in the flesh. And they were not a good team. They were a team of very good players, but they weren't a good unit. Now, look, obviously Carrick's come in mid-season. You don't get loads of time on the training ground, although with no extra cup competitions, he's probably had more time on the training ground than most managers, certainly most Man United managers would normally get. But they didn't look like they've actually put anything concrete together in terms of a style or an identity or anything like that. Again, like I say, very early days. And he has done an excellent job, Carrick. But yeah, it looked to me like a team of good players who wanted to play together, but didn't necessarily have all the tools in terms of those, those, as Regis likes to talk about, those connections and those dynamics in the squad. They weren't very interesting, Man United. But yeah, they looked, as you say, that summed it up, that that layoff of the free kick. And there was a couple of times, wasn't there, where they were laying the ball off to Ahmad, and I think all of us were, hearts in mouths thinking, oh, of course he's going to score, of course he's going to score. But beyond that, I never worried, really. Xerxes was, I don't want to sit and just slag footballers off because they'd all run rings around me, but he was poor. Mind, I thought Omar Alderete had an excellent game marshalling him. I know he's not, he's no Erling Haaland, but he's a big lad, and Man United were targeting him a lot with the ball, trying to get it up there and make it stick. And Alderete was aggressive. He was, his positioning was excellent. He knew when to stay goal side of him and when to try and nip in front and win the ball. And he was definitely letting him know he was there a couple of times. There was one I think it was in the first half where Xerxes has the ball and Alderete is just basically, he just sees red and just sprints after him, and he doesn't stop till he hauls him to the ground. And then I think the referee ended up having to calm Xerxes down after and be like, look, just let it go. He's South American. He's mad. let him be.
It was like somebody had a Corporal Jones conversation with Alderete saying he doesn't like it up and basically before.
Yeah, absolutely. But I just to finish off, I agree with you, Chris. I thought they were not a cohesive attacking unit, and it looked like a team where Bruno Fernandes wants the record, and Ahmad really wanted a goal at the Stadium of Light, and I think Xerxes he knows he's not really long for being a Man United player, and you could tell.
Well, talking about Agent Ahmad, Nick, because around 18 minutes, he put his arm out and made contact with the ball with his arm. I mean, my feelings was it would have been harsh, but I don't know what your feelings on that penalty shout was.
Interesting. Ahmad, I mean, I think Reinildo, quick word on him, I thought Reinildo marshalled him brilliantly yesterday. Yeah. I don't think Ahmad had his best game, but I thought Reinildo, part of that was because Reinildo stuck to him and made sure that he didn't get an inch away from him, and I thought he did really, really well. But the penalty, funny enough, of course, we sit right next to the away analysts who, they're literally right next to me. So during that penalty VAR discussion, I was chatting with the analysts from Manchester United who had it all on their screens and everything. And it was him that pointed out to me, he said, look, that this will be disallowed because it's come off his hip onto his hand. And so that then was the reason that the penalty was not given. It's a difficult one because he clearly had his arm was away from his body. It was in the air. And as someone said afterwards, if that was in Europe, it would have been given. But here they don't, because, that technicality, it brushed off the hip. In hindsight now, it's a shame they didn't get a penalty, because if that was going to be the route they needed to score a goal to win the game 1-0, that was a brilliant opportunity. But under the laws of the game, it wasn't, and it's a shame. But I think I agree with both of you. There was a lack of cohesiveness as well about Manchester United yesterday. I think the 5 changes Michael Carrick made disrupted their game, and they didn't seem a team. They didn't look like a team that were playing together. They did look like a group of individuals, I think. And that whole Fernandes assist saga is clearly, it's an agenda now, isn't it, for Bruno Fernandes? Because he had 3 games left going into the game yesterday to get that to equal the record and possibly beat it. So now he's only got 2 games left to do it.
Yeah. Well. Before we talk more about how brilliant Sunderland were against Manchester United, I think it's time for us to take a quick break. So we'll be back very soon.
Tomorrow morning is knocking. Stock your fridge now. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or a sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel, maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
This spring, Uber Eats has you covered. Whether you're celebrating mom, dad, or your favorite grad, not all of us are great planners, and with the Uber Eats gift hub, you don't have to be. Send flowers, perfume, champagne, or just their favorite meal straight to their door. Gifts arrive in as little as 25 minutes, and you can add a personalized video message for that additional so-not-last-minute touch. So this spring, get a leg up on gift giving with Uber Eats. Last-minute gifts that land every time. Must be 21 or older to purchase alcohol. Product availability varies per region. See app for details.
Zootopia 2 has come home to Disney+.
Let's go!
Get ready for a new case.
We're gonna crack this case and prove we're the greatest partners of all time!
New friends.
You are... Gary the Snake. And your last name? The Snake.
Dream Team.
And new habitats.
Zootopia has a secret reptile population.
You can watch the record-breaking phenomenon at home.
You're clearly working at
Zootopia 2, now available on Disney Plus, rated PG.
Now at McDonald's, a McDouble is $2.50, so you can get your gym gains on, or just get lunch for only $2.50. Get more value on the under $3 menu.
Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher for delivery.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
And welcome back to How We're the Podcast. And of course, we're right in the middle of seeing how good the lads were against Manchester United at the Stadium of Light in the goalless draw. I just want to talk about a move on around the half-hour mark, Jonny. And I thought this kind of summed things up a little bit. It started off with Xhaka, who played the ball into Lafay, who played the ball to Robbie, ended up with Siddiqui, and his shot was deflected wide. But just something we haven't really seen enough of this season. And I don't know whether it was maybe the shackles were off or what, but the way that they seem to have the freedom to pop the ball about and kind of, almost support each other, that we haven't really seen, as I said, enough of. But as we've been talking, it was just fantastic football to create that chance. And again, on another day, that deflects in, doesn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And this is something that I think a lot of people have been saying through the season, haven't they? We don't shoot enough. We don't have enough shots. Now, sometimes that's because we don't get into those positions enough because we're, struggling to create and getting penned in. But sometimes it's because we're not clever enough with the way we use the ball. But we did use the ball very cleverly yesterday. And that was one example of where we get a corner out of it, I think, didn't we, in the end? And that's what happens when you shoot. You don't necessarily need to score a goal for taking a shot on to have been worth it. You get a corner. Sometimes, you might get a throw in or something, but you get up the pitch, you pen them in, they've got to get men back, you start dominating the game. And that was just one little example of something that we have improved over the last few weeks. And I think not just the one-touch passing at times. I mean, it was excellent to watch, and as we've already discussed a bit, some of those triangles were brilliant, the way they were popping it through the lines. But we played a lot more centrally. Now, part of that's probably just because Lafay was through the middle. But I think a lot of our better moves earlier in the season were when we were involving the fullbacks getting higher up, and then, you would have your wingers maybe tucked slightly inside. We'd be able to work an opportunity to cut one back. I'm thinking of Lafay's goal against, I want to say Brentford. I can't remember. It was one of the home games anyway. But there was a Lafay goal where it ends up with, I think, Nordy on the right corner of the box, and he just fizzes it back across, and there's a first-time finish, Lafay low into the corner. That was what we were doing when we were at our best, whereas, as I say, against Man United, it was a lot more through the middle, which just makes you a more difficult team to deal with. It's the same kind of thing when we talk about a winger. If you can go one way, you're good. If you can go both ways, you're brilliant. with Sunderland now, if you can build out wide, great. If you can build out wide and through the middle, you're onto a bit of a winner. And there was something else I noticed, I think, which I wonder if this might have been something that they've worked on as a whole unit, because it felt like a lot of times, a lot of players were taking one or two extra touches to bait the defender into trying to challenge them, and then just playing a little almost scoop flick with the outside of the foot just round the corner, just to sort of like flick it past the defender's foot and to somebody a couple of yards away. I mean, Mukiele did it a few times, Xhaka did it a couple of times, I think Hertrauda did it a couple of times, but that was just something really clever that I liked as well, because obviously you take a defender out the game who's trying to challenge you, but by just playing these little balls around the corner and the little flicks, I think it's easier for the guy who receives the ball as well to then drive. Because a few times, Mukiele especially, I couldn't believe how high up the pitch he was getting to see he was playing at centre-half. He was more than happy to step into that midfield, pick up the ball, drive at the Man United defence. And again, this all comes from being willing to build up through the middle. And as you say, Chris, the chance that you detailed where it ends up with Siddiqui, that's one example, but there were almost countless times where, okay, maybe it didn't even end up in a chance, but we were getting to the edge of the box, we were getting into dangerous areas. And that's again where we talk about maybe the final decision not quite being there. But it was really encouraging to see us showing that we've developed some new ways and new methods of being able to get at teams, because that's what I think a lot of people have been crying out for from Labris. We've wanted to see, what does the next stage of Sunderland look like? And we're just starting to see those green shoots now of what could be a very exciting team next season.
Yeah, well, it's something I'm going to look out for now. That you might have just created the Sunderland scoop, Johnny. So it might be something to look out for.
I'm not taking credit for creating mine. That's all Reggie.
But Nick, actually, just on this point and on this chance as well, or the chance that we created brilliantly. One thing I noticed, because there was a stat around this time as well, that touches in the box at around, I think it was about 35 minutes. We had 19 touches in the box. They had 1 at that point. But the point I wanted to make about how we were attacking is something I don't think we've seen enough, which was the second run. So when somebody gave the ball into Lefay or into Brian Brobby, they were on their bike and they were running past them and they were giving them another option, which I don't think... I remember against Burnley, Diarra did this a lot with Brian Brobby. And I don't think this is what the players have almost been passing it into players and going, right, well, you do the rest. And I think on this occasion, it did seem there was an emphasis on making runs beyond the player with the ball.
I think it's interesting because I think Siddiqui was more involved yesterday than he's been involved recently. And I was actually getting at times mixed up between Hertrauda and Siddiqui, because Hertrauda was making a lot of moves into the centre and getting heavily involved in attacks as well. And I think you're absolutely right about there was more movement in and around and into the box than previously. And Brobby was coming back a little deeper than he's done of late as well, in these sort of small passing sort of triangles and movements. But I think that Siddiqui and Hertrauda and Lefay suddenly were becoming nuisances for Manchester United, because they were getting on the ball so much, and there was a much greater emphasis. I agree with what Johnny was saying about the way that they're playing yesterday and the way that the team was set up, that there's a greater emphasis on moving the ball, shifting the ball more quickly, and keeping tight to each other. So Sunderland weren't allowing themselves to get stretched across the pitch. They were moving as one, if you like, and which meant ultimately that it was probably a very, very tiring game, I think, for Sunderland to play. And I think we saw that reflected in Trey Hume and Enzo Lefay later in the game. You could see that they were very heavy-legged, because I think the game plan changed. That all those players, Hume was another one, that became more involved in central midfield and running and trying to keep close to each other to enable them to make those quick flick passes and short passes rather than longer balls down the wings and down the flanks. But that gave Manchester United a lot of problems. They couldn't deal with that, the speed and the physicality, if you like, of the way that Sunderland played yesterday.
And just something to add on to that as well, by the way, Nick, I think you spot on to point out that they were keeping, like we say, keeping closer together. And that benefited us when we lost the ball as well, because we've all talked about how we were disappointed in Man United going forward, but I think a lot of that was because the way that we pressed them and hunted in packs. There wasn't just one Sunderland player going and standing somebody up a lot of the time. Certainly in the midfield, there was two or three who were around. There might be two people both putting a leg in or blocking off the passes, and that wouldn't have been possible if everybody was spread out across the pitch when we had the ball, would it? You just wouldn't be able to get back in time. So I think it helped us in both directions. That.
Nick, would you think it would be a fair statement to make if I said the team had an intensity that we haven't seen for a while?
Yes, yeah, I think so. I think that was from the very start. I mean, I referred earlier about the start that they made is probably the best they've made this season because it was intense and it was energetic. And I think Regis Lebris has always said, "Oh, we've got to start brightly. We've got to do this and we've got to do that," and they never quite achieved it. And generally allowed the opposition to score first or get into the game earlier than Sunderland did. The only thing I would say yesterday is I thought Sunderland was slow out of the blocks in the start of the second half. It took them 10, 15 minutes to get back into the game and get into that rhythm again. But they did. I mean, they found a way back. But I think there was definitely in the first half, there was a much higher intensity and energy about Sunderland than we've seen in recent weeks. And if they can keep that going for the last couple of games of the season, they will have a good end to the season.
Yeah. And because actually you're absolutely right. I noticed that. And I actually wrote down at the start of that second half that we did have a slow start. But I thought that actually Sunderland got better as the crowd filtered back in. as the crowd came back as all the crowd were in their seats and almost right, we're ready to start now, the fans are back. But as people were filtering in, the atmosphere was a bit subdued and it kind of translated onto the pitch. But as you said, it took us a little bit to get going in that second half, Jonny. And it was around the hour mark when actually there was the worst game of head tennis you'll ever see in the middle of the park. And then it finally fell to Lafay, who slid in Brobby and fantastic shot and really good save from the shot. But actually, Jonny, just talking about Brian Brobby in that role, and we'll come on to what happened next in a minute, but just on that role, I thought it was brilliant to not just see him be that person you played the ball into his feet and people play it off. Brilliant to see him on the shoulder of the last man, waiting for Lafay to play that ball through and being slid in behind the defence. And I thought that was really good to see, especially because Lafay's coming into the middle. That Brian Brobby is looking for that run. He's looking for that ball in behind.
Yeah, there were shades of Spurs away about it, wasn't there? The goal he scored that day. Obviously, that was it ended in a goal, and I think it was a lovely move, the one-touch pass in that day. But this was an echo of that, and obviously it didn't end in a goal. And it was a good save from the Man United keeper, to be fair, from Lamans, who, he's been great for them since he come in, hasn't he? But as you say, it was nice to see that Brobby, again, like I was talking about almost before, with the way that Sunderland have added some more strings to the bow, the way that they go forward. Brobby now, it feels like he's right on the verge of everything just clicking into place, where he turns from just not just because that's playing him down, but he turns from a guy who leads the line to an all-round centre-forward threat where, as you said, he was dropping a bit deeper against Manchester United, and because of the players being closer together, that was helping him be able to not just receive the ball, but be able to use it as well. He was, as you say, sliding behind, unlucky with that one. I thought it was a good effort from Brobby as well. There's been times this season where he was 1v1 where I've been disappointed in the finish. Particularly, I think of Man City at home, when he absolutely bullied Ruben Dias and gets him behind, and then at the end the finish was just a bit tame. It's just not quite accurate. But that one yesterday, he was unlucky. I think he basically did everything pretty much right, and it was just a good save from the goalkeeper that stopped him. But as you say, spins him behind. There was another time he tried to spin him behind, which I think we'll talk about that one in due course. But yeah, and I think his first touch looks like it's improving a bit as well. Not like, not leaps and bounds, because he's only been here less than a full season. But I think there's been times where the ball's been about to go to Brobby in a potentially promising position. You're just like, I think he's going to lose it here. The defenders are just too close, so the ball's got too much pace. Whereas by contrast, I think against Manchester United, nearly everything either stuck or was laid off correctly and brought somebody into the game. So I've said it a few times this season, next season, Brian Brobby with a full pre-season behind him, he's going to be a proper handful for this league, and I think he's going to score a lot of goals for Sunderland.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning at this point that we paid around half the price that Manchester United played for Xerxes, by the way.
And a third of the price that Sunderland's record expensive goal scorer of all time, Nick Voltermachem, cost a certain team down the road, I believe.
Yep, and
I had to get that in.
Yeah, I'll work out the fraction of Isaac as well later on. But anyway, yeah, a minute later, Nick, there's a cross to the back post, and this is probably the other side of the conversation with Brian Brobby. He's tussling with Martinez, or he's been kind of played through again, as Johnny said, spanned Martinez. It appeared when you saw it back, you just saw Brobby go down in full speed, and I didn't know if there was much of it. You wonder, Brian Brobby doesn't really go down easily, and you thought, well, there must be something in that. And then you see the replay, and it looks like Martinez has kind of struck out on him. And I mean, we'll get into another VAR review, of course, in a bit, but I'm just amazed VAR didn't look at that properly.
I was surprised because it's clear when I saw the replay that Martinez was basically, his whole body weight was trying to take Brobby down, and I've seen those given, with a VAR review. You'd think the number of times I saw the replay and I thought, no, that's a penalty, and you could see Brian's reaction. He was furious. He couldn't believe that the free kick went the other way, or it went a free kick rather than a penalty. And I have to say, I have some empathy with him because I did think he was being manhandled basically in the penalty area, and Martinez was trying to bring him down. In my mind, that's a penalty. So they did get away with it, I think.
Interestingly, I think you might have been thinking there about the second one, Nick.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Because there was the two. There was the first one where Martinez actually swung his arm at him.
Yeah.
And the second one, I think you're talking about the one at the back post.
Yes, when he burst in down the right-hand side of the area.
It says everything about the ref that this confusion is possible.
Yeah.
By the way,
yeah.
But that one, I think that was Luke Shaw at the back post. I might be getting that wrong, or it might be Martinez. I can't remember. But this whole conversation, Nick, about Brian Brobby is that Brian Brobby does hold somebody's shirt, and he does hold on. Do you think that Sunderland fans, when somebody else is holding his shirt, think we should be getting more out of it than we actually should because it's 6 and 2 3s? Or do you think Brian Brobby's hard done to?
Overall this season, I think he's been hard done to. I think referees look at him and his physicality and make a subconscious decision that he's the aggressor. When I think when you watch the way that he plays, he's being the opposition are being aggressive towards him to try and stop him, because he is physically strong and he can hold the ball up. And so I think the opposition players do try and use a sort of a mental leverage, if you like, over referees, that Brian's the aggressor, when I think it's often been the other way around. I'm not saying he's an angel, and he does, he does grab hold of shirts, and all players do. I mean, it happened in, I think, who was it? That Man United got a free kick. The advantage was played, but the referee pulled it back because initially, I think it might have been Reinildo basically nearly taking the shirt off the back of whoever it was. But I think Brobby does suffer from a reputation that that the referees think he's the aggressor, just because of the size it is and the ability he has to hold the ball up. So overall, over the season, I think he's generally been hard done to.
Yeah. And what we're seeing is Martinez should have been sent off for lashing out, and we should have had that penalty at the back stick as well. But Johnny, with about 20 minutes to go, Gacharda picked the ball up with space in front of him, and this reminded me of the recent goal that McGillis scored, actually, because he just used that space in front of him and ran into it. He played the ball into Brobby. Brobby gave it back to him because he continued his run. And then I thought his technique was unbelievable with his left foot as somebody's challenging him. And then it hit the base of the post. But again, we'll come on to the performance of Gacharda at this point, Johnny, because I thought he was fantastic. And it's got everybody asking why he hasn't had that run of games I think he needed.
Yeah, he was excellent, wasn't he? That should have and could have been the moment that capped off an excellent performance with a goal, which I think would have been richly deserved, because not only the fact that he played so well, and not only the fact that it was against, I know we've all just sort of done them down a bit, but a team like Manchester United, who are third in the Premier League, against, I mean, I think he was directly up against Mateus Cunha, wasn't he, over on that side, who didn't have his best game, but has been excellent at times this season. And when he was at Wolves as well, he was one of the best attackers in the league. So all that put together, and the lack of football that he's had this season, to turn that performance in was just, yeah, it was gobsmacking, really. I didn't expect it. And not because I don't rate him as a player. And I know I said before I've maybe been a bit harsh on him, but I've never thought he's not a good footballer. I just didn't expect him to have that in him yesterday, and full credit to him, because to put that performance in after the season that he's had, it can't be easy. Okay, as difficult as life can be for a Premier League footballer, it can't have been easy for him at times this season. And yeah, he was brilliant, and he would have deserved that goal. The goal, the chance itself, as you say, he did really well. He didn't create the chance for himself, but by driving forward and crucially continuing the run, like you said, Chris, he earned the opportunity to have a shot there. And that's something, again, we've mentioned a lot about players not shooting enough from outside the box. Sometimes it just opens up, and it did just open up for him, didn't it? And I haven't actually seen back whether it got a deflection or not, because I didn't have a great view of it from where we were sat. It looked like it might have flicked the defender on the way through, but either way, so unlucky to see it come back off the base of the post. And I don't think Manchester United could have had any complaints if that had gone, an inch or two to the other side and just snuck in that far post bottom corner, because even though we were better in the first half than we were in the second, by that point that chance was taken, we had still by far and away been the better team in that game. And we'll come on to, Man United maybe late flurries a bit generous, but they had a couple of late chances. They hadn't happened yet by this point, so we would have still been full value to go ahead in that game. And yeah, just really, really unlucky. It's one of those where you come away as gutted for the player as you are for the fact that we haven't scored, because it would have been the perfect combo of goal and goal scorer, but not to be.
Yeah, and Nick, on Cutrado with a performance like this, have you got an inkling on why he hasn't been given that run? Because of course there was the January Liverpool links, which might have unsettled him. You don't know what his attitude's been behind the scenes, because there's times this season when we've gone through either rough runs or players have been out with AFCON or injury. He could have come in, and Lebris hasn't really used him as much as, of course, Cutrado would have wanted. But at the same time, he's never let the side down when he's come in.
No, it's perplexing, and I thought he was brilliant yesterday. And I think the other thing about him yesterday was you could see he was clearly invested in the team and the club, and it wasn't a player who he looked like he really wanted to be there and part of it. And so when Regis de Vries talked about alignment, I thought he was fully aligned yesterday. I thought, which is all the more perplexing that he's not been used more often over the season, and whether it is down to the training ground, because Regis de Vries has touched on that in the last couple of weeks, that he still does look at the players in training and what they're giving in training as to whether they are going to be involved in the match. I don't know, but it is a mystery when you see the performance he gave yesterday and the ability that he's got. He seems to be just outside that group of, is it 16 that Regis de Vries has talked about as being his core squad. They're the 16 he trusts implicitly. And there's these other players that are on the fringes of that. And Cutrado this season seems to be one of those ones that has been unfortunate and is just on the fringes of that group of 16, trying to fight his way in. And is it because he's a lone player? Is it, who knows? It is a bit of a mystery, because when I've watched him play, I think he's strong, he's athletic, he's technically gifted. I think he's a very good all-round player, and he can clearly play in more than one position. So he's versatile as well. So he
ticks all the boxes, doesn't he?
He does, which makes it even more of a mystery why he's not been involved more.
Yeah, it is a strange one. But yeah, there was a really good chance actually a few minutes after this with Brian Brobby with a free header from a free kick right in front of goal, and actually got this one all wrong. You should have maybe done better with that one. But around 10 minutes to go or so, the first substitution was made, Jonny, and everyone thought Hume's name was going to go up, or Hume's number was going to go up anyway, to be replaced by Angulo, but it was Talby. Now, talk to me about Trey Hume, Johnny, because there's been a lot of talk about his performance, and there's been times this season, and I'm thinking about Liverpool away, there was one at home that escapes me right now, but that this experiment with Trey Hume on the right side of midfield has worked, and he's been fantastic. Now, whether yesterday was an off day and tactically or just individual performance, but a lot of people have been talking about that experiment with Hume on the right.
It's worth prefacing by saying it also, to a degree, worked yesterday. We got a point against the team third in the league who've just qualified for the Champions League last week and beat the champions. You know, it's not like we've just played Wolves at home and come away with a 0-0 draw where everyone's going, come on, we should be beating these. If anyone comes away from a game against Man United saying, well, we should be beating them, just, calm down a bit and get yourself checked out. So, yeah, he didn't cost us the game. He wasn't dreadful. He didn't have a stinker or anything. It's not like he had the sort of game where you get hauled off after 45 minutes or less, but he was poor going forward. Now, I feel sorry for him to a large degree. Again, as sorry as you can feel for an elite footballer who's, living the dream. But that's not his position. It's obviously not his position. He is a right back. He does an admirable job when he's called upon elsewhere on the pitch. I think he's done, at times this season, I think he's been superb even when he's played out of position. There's been times where he's been the key to making that sort of hybrid swap between a 4 and a 5 in and out of possession style that we played. And I'm particularly thinking as well of, like I say, earlier in the season, we used that shape at Stamford Bridge. We used that shape at times against Everton at home. I know we didn't win the game, but we got a result. And Trey Hume's been excellent in some of those games. As you say, Liverpool away, he was brilliant, and we almost come away with 3 points that day, but for that Isidore chance. So it can work, and we know it can work. And I think Trey Hume tactically is the type of player that Lebris clearly loves. And I think Chris Rigg almost falls into the same category, but to a lesser degree, where he just, I think, implicitly trusts them to take on his message and know exactly what he wants them to do, wherever that is on the pitch. But he is still a right back, and he doesn't have the level of incisive passing that an attacking player needs in the Premier League. And we saw that at times where, I can't remember the exact scenario, but there was one where Hume had the ball maybe 25 to 30 yards out over on the right channel, and there was a reasonably simple through ball for Brobby, and he just plays it straight to the defender, and the whole crowd's just like, because the chance was on, and he's tried and he's picked the right option, but he just can't do it. It's just not his.
I think because I think literally he was knackered. I think he was exhausted. Yeah. His legs just seemed to you had that feeling in your lead in your legs. He looked, and I think that's why we all thought he was going to come off, because he just didn't have the legs. But it's interesting because in that moment I was thinking, it reminded me back of the Sheffield Wednesday second leg playoff when Alex Neil, we all thought Patrick Roberts and I think Jack Clark, they were all knackered. But afterwards, Alex Neil said, I just knew they would produce something, and I trusted the players to do that. And I just had that feeling yesterday about Trey Hume, Regis Debris, trust, and you talked about that implicit trust in Hume. Regis Debris implicitly trusts Hume, and I think he felt that Hume would do something, would produce something. That was probably the moment at which we thought he was going to do it, because that, as you say, it was a relatively simple ball to play, and it would have been a goal, I'm sure, because Man United's defence they'd been dissected and it was open, it was wide open, and as you say, that collective sigh when the ball went weakly, tamely to the defender, you thought that was the moment. But I just think him, and I think Lefay later, their legs just seemed to have they just didn't have any energy. They were just
I think I think you're spot on, Nick. And the thing is, Lefay's the perfect comparison, isn't he? Because Lefay, when he's knackered, he's got all of his entire career of being an attacking top-level player, of muscle memory and natural decisions to fall back on. When he can't, he needs to push through that final couple of percent, he still knows what to do. Hume, when he's flagging and his legs feel like they're full of lead, he doesn't have an entire career's worth of incisive through balls or whipping in crosses or whatever it is to fall back on. And at the top level, that does tell, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, a few minutes later, as we've said, we should have gotten that penalty, that tussle at the back post. Still don't know how VAR could have looked at that again and given and backed the referee up with a free kick to Manchester United. I mean, the mind absolutely boggles. But a few minutes after that, Nick, we get the Angulo elbow.
Yeah.
Which I just thought it was a moment of madness. And I thought, oh, here we go. VAR's going to look at it. Decision. Man United are going to do their last minute thing. It just felt like that at the time.
I do think he was lucky. I mean, I watched it again and again. And I'm thinking, well, you can't dispute it. His arm has made contact with Fernandez's face. Now, how again? VAR. I think VAR they must go for tea breaks or something. I think during the afternoon. Because they you can see they've looked, they're clearly, because of the number of replays you get on the screen, they're obviously looking at something. But how Angulo got away with that after, last week, Dan Ballard's hair pull, and Angulo doesn't get a red card for a physically violent conduct. Dan Ballard gets sent off for a hair pull, which never in a million years was violent conduct. Angulo swings his arm and catches Fernandez in the face, and it's not a card. That was a mystery to me. I don't know what the process was, because we never got an explanation as to why that wasn't in any way, shape or form a card.
I really appreciated Granit Xhaka's miming. I say miming, he actually reenacted it on Bruno Fernandes in front of the ref, and Xhaka's like, no, he's just shoulder barging him, and he just barges Fernandes out the way.
I think the only thing that potentially saved Angulo is the fact that he was a foot taller.
Yeah,
I think
possibly.
I think genuinely the only thing, because they thought, well, if he's doing that to barge him, but Martinez is down there, then I think that's the only thing that saved him. But Johnny, I mean, when you consider, what happened with Ballard, and that, he's got a 3-match ban, and this, VAR didn't pull him up on this. It's incredible, isn't it?
Well, it's ludicrous. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. It's absolutely ridiculous, as Nick said, to call Dan Ballard's against Wolves violent conduct, but then to do nothing about Angulo or even Martinez on Robbie in the box, as we mentioned earlier. It might be a little bit dramatic, but the motion he makes is essentially a punch. He's got a closed fist, which goes towards Robbie's face. I don't understand how that isn't violent conduct and Angulo isn't violent conduct. But Ballard on, I think it was Tolu, wasn't it? That's violent conduct. And even Martinez himself a few weeks ago, he got sent off for the same thing against Leeds, didn't he? The hair pull on Dominic Calvert-Lewin, which, again, that's violent conduct and worthy of missing 3 games. Ballard's season got ended by that decision. But
as a result of that appeal, the club told me yesterday that they are reviewing this whole hair thing in the summer.
Good.
And it's going to be downgraded. That the view is, I think it's going to be downgraded. It'll be at most a yellow card. It will be then to the discretion of the referee in the game as to whether
upgrade it
if it's worse, as in Calvert-Lewin.
Yeah, and that's good news, but it's too little, too late for Ballard, isn't it?
I mean, for Dan, he's missed 3. The opportunity to play, 3 marquee games, at the end of the season for him, and that's wrong,
Yeah, absolutely. And there was that substitution in the last minute where Mayenda replaced Hume. Just very quickly, Nick, because Isidore wasn't the name who came on; it was Mayenda who came on for Trey Hume. But in a game like this, where you might have thought, actually, even if you didn't want to bring Isidore off, Robbie off, Isidore could have played out wide or anything like that. There's been a lot of rumours in the last week about him leaving, and he's got the World Cup to focus on. These last couple of games, if we don't see Isidore come on the pitch, do you think this is the last time we see him?
Well, it goes back to the Hertrauder thing, isn't it? It's like we all think Hertrauder's probably not staying because of the stories in the week, and yet he comes and he plays brilliantly, and that's almost a statement to say we want him to stay. He's got a future at Sunderland. And the other flip side of that is that Isidore doesn't get on. Mayenda is staying and is here next season. We'll give him the opportunity. I'm with you. I think Isidore probably isn't going to stay, and that was probably reflected in Mayenda coming on against Manchester United. But it will be. I think that it'll be more telling against Everton and Chelsea as to who plays and who doesn't play as to where we're going at the end of the season about who is going, if you like. But I think I think most Sunderland fans are probably minded to think that Isidore's not going to stay. Because it's just not, from his point of view, he's not had the minutes he'd have wanted. It's not worked out in that sense for him. And if he wants to play football at this level, he probably does have to move. Because he's clearly, he's not, Broby is the number one. That's unequivocally the case. Mienda's young, turned 21 this week. He's got a bright future ahead of him. You've got two strikers. They'll look for another striker in the summer, no doubt. And Isidore, is probably the victim of the Broby success and the fact that Mienda's, in succession, if you like.
Yeah. I mean, Jonny, just very quickly, because a lot of people have been questioning the substitutions and the timings of the substitutions. It was the last minute when Hume came off and, like I said, replaced with Mienda. But then it goes to show when he tried to be positive in the last few minutes, it was Manchester United who had the impetus in injury time, and good save from Roofs, and surprisingly a decent decision by the referee to book Cunha when he threw himself to the ground. So, I mean, people say, oh, well, he should have went positive earlier, but actually, if you look at what happened when he did, Man United actually pushed forward, didn't they?
Yeah, I agree. But just on that Cunha dive, the way the referee he just stopped and he was like staring. I was convinced he's pointing to the spot here.
Yeah.
When he finally blew and he did signal the other way out, the sigh of relief that I was breathing was enormous. But you're spot on, and it's something that this really bugs us whenever you listen to sort of, I don't know, take the phone in on BBC Newcastle after the game and you get people ringing up going, well, we need to score more goals, so get another striker and put them up top with Broby. And you go, right, well, it's really easy to say, let's just stick two up top, but then what you're going to do with the midfield and what you're going to do with the defence? Because as you say, as soon as Mienda comes on, there's only, 4 minutes of injury time, I think? So there was 5 minutes in total if you include that last minute of normal time when he came on. And in that 5 minutes, we probably could have conceded 2, if not 3 goals. Like if Man United had punished us more, if we hadn't defended so well or the roof save, that's quite a concern. That we went from being so not necessarily dominant in the second half, but so much so the team on top, to being very much the team under the pump. I think that tells you all you need to know about why Lebris makes a lot of the decisions that he does in terms of the makeup of the team further back. Okay, you lose stuff going forward, but you can't have everything. So you've got to have trade-offs somewhere, and this is one of those. Because as much as I love Mienda, and I would love to see him get a run out wide, because I think the way that he runs at people and he's got the ability to get past them, and he's so direct, I think it's great. But there's a time and a place. Maybe yesterday wasn't exactly the right time or place for it. So that's another good example, if it was needed, that there is a method to the supposed madness of not just being gung-ho and creating chances willy-nilly, because you can leave yourself slightly exposed. And I thought we defended well, mind. To say, I'm being a bit glib there, but we did do a good job of keeping them out, because they had those... they had a couple of corners as well in quick succession, didn't they, right at the end? And Carrick was fuming because the ref blew the whistle before they could take one of them, when the same thing happened to us at half-time. But, we were still organised. There was only one corner that was dropped right on top of Roos's head in the 6-yard box that I thought he struggled to deal with. But that can happen, and they clearly targeted him, and it targeted him in that instance. But that was the only moment where I was like, oh, okay, we're in trouble a bit here. By and large, I still thought, as much as United came onto us, barring that roof save, I thought we were still really good value for the clean sheet in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant performance. Ended goalless, of course, Nick. But just looking at the bigger picture a little bit, because it's really strange the way you can look at this, Nick, because we haven't won in 4 games. But in some ways, you kind of forget that, because 3 out of the 4, we're kind of okay. Well, 2 out of the 4, I suppose, were okay performances. Manchester United was a brilliant performance. Maybe should have gotten more. Of course, you've got the Nottingham Forest game in there, which is the anomaly. But we haven't won in 4 at the business end of the season, when actually it's going to end up with that frustrating feeling about it, isn't it? Because it's almost, it's not over yet. We've still got 2 games left, and it's kind of 5 points, I think, up to 6th, if I remember rightly, maybe a bit more, I can't remember. But there could be that element of frustration about it, because, like I said, we haven't won those games, have we?
I think they were unlucky at Wolves. I think if they kept the 11, they'd have beaten Wolves. I think if Ballard hadn't been sent off, the direction of travel was a Sunderland win. I thought they were a better team, and they were creating chances and they were getting behind them. And I think with the extra man, that would have been quite telling in the end. And yesterday, if we come away from that game with a 1-0 win, we'd have been cock-a-hoop absolutely through the roof. What a brilliant win that would have been over Manchester United. And they were just unlucky yesterday. I thought I think refereeing decisions, they should have had a penalty in the game. They were unlucky hitting the post. They had opportunities. On another day, one of them may have gone in and they'd have come away with a 1-0 win. I thought it was, for an end of season performance, I thought it was excellent. I think when we've talked about Sunderland possibly plateauing in the last couple of months, I thought the uplift we saw from them yesterday and the energy and the intensity was fantastic. And we might still get that at Everton, and we might get it in the last game against Chelsea. I think it's been a fantastic season. I think the squad has been suffering from the length of the season, the sort of naivety of the squad being so young and inexperienced has caught up with them. But I think for this final effort, I thought yesterday was fantastic. And if they can maintain those levels for the last 2 games of the season, we'll look back and say, look, what a fantastic season it's been. They're going to finish in mid-table, a phenomenal points total at the level at which the Premier League is now, and some of the teams that they're facing, some of the football that they're playing. And what a learning curve it's going to have been for Sunderland. If they've achieved with ease, if you like, their first target of staying up. Because I think all of us at the start of the season were expecting them to be 16th, 17th in where West Ham are now, in a scrap for relegation. But they breezed through the first half of the season, or first third of the season, struggled somewhat, from November onwards. But there have been, a lot of reasons for that, AFCON, injuries, and so on. Now they're getting the squad back to full fitness for these last few games. We're seeing again that what they can achieve as a whole when they are energized and energetic and playing the sort of football that they played yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, Jonny, I'm looking now. I've got the points difference in front of me. 3 points up to 8th, 5 points up to 7th, and 7 points up to 6th. Are we still dreaming of that Conference League next season?
Why not? Why not, man? Let's have a bit of optimism about us in the last couple of games. We've got now to lose, have we? As Nick said, we've absolutely smashed the target that we set for ourselves. Talking about people thought we'd be in West Ham's position. I mean, people outside of the club, everybody had us in Wolves' position. If they even had us getting as many points as that, the people talking about record low points totals and what have you. Obviously, those people were never to be taken seriously, but it's still very true to say that we've wildly overachieved this season, no matter what happens in the last couple of games. Even if we lose them both, there's no shame in that. Going away to Everton, if we lose that game, that can happen. And Chelsea, I know they've been on a bad run, but they've took a point against Liverpool. They're still again, not a good team, but they're a side full of some very good players, Cole Palmer and players like that. So no matter what happens, we can come away happy. We may as well just enjoy it, go into these games with a bit of hope, bit of optimism. We trust this team. I think we trust the head coach. We trust the ownership, which is not a position that we're used to being in. Sunderland as a club and Sunderland fans as a fan base are not used to these kinds of end of seasons. We've either got a horrible relegation battle to contend with, or an extremely stressful promotion battle to contend with. Or we had one season where we finished 16th in the Championship, and then we had all the meltdown about not having a manager. So just enjoy it. Everything's on an even keel. We can enjoy the games of football. We get to, watch a very good team play some other very good teams. And fingers crossed, if we do well enough, we'll come out the end of it with 6 points. That could well be enough to put us in the top 8. And if so, then us lot will be a generation of Sunderland fans to experience something that nobody has for, more than 50 years, and watch Sunderland play in Europe. What a carrot that is to dangle in front of the players, eh? So, yeah, let's enjoy it and let's back them. I still think we can do it. I don't see any reason why not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll give the last word to Nick because it's been a fantastic season. You must have loved being back at these Premier League grounds, Nick. And we've got 2 fantastic games left. So it is just a case of just really enjoying ourselves, isn't it?
Oh, give me League One any day. You know? No, it's been remarkable. I mean, it's been beyond my highest hopes at the start of the season because you hear about the media circus that surrounds Premier League and everything that goes with it. It's actually been as a working environment, it's been very good. Actually, it's been fine, and it's just been exciting. It's been, some of the football's been brilliant, as you say. The stadiums now, that some of those new stadiums, Everton. I'm looking forward to going back there because I think that is, to my mind, that's the best new stadium. I think Tottenham's is far too soulless, corporate, and whereas the architects and the club have really embraced Everton's culture and the docks and the way they've built it and how they've all the sort of legacy that they managed to build into the stadium, and the way that they've kept all the Docklands architecture, the walls and everything. I think it's fantastic. And where it is, right on the river, it's a brilliant, brilliant stadium. So to be able to visit places like that has been fantastic this season. I know the atmosphere at games has been brilliant. Everyone's been so invested in the club this season. Just all little things, the Keel Crossing opening, the welcome to Sunderland on the Roker end. There's so many little things that have all combined, and as a whole, it'd be a season I think a lot of people look back on and say, well, what a fantastic season that first season back in the Premier League was.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have set it better, and a perfect place to end today. So just leaves me to say thank you very much, Nick. Thank you very much for your time. And Jonny, thank you as always. And thanks again, everyone, for listening. Don't forget, we'll have loads more analysis on the Roker Report website. And we'll have one every day this week as usual. So look out for all of that. But from us, it's bye for now.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Bar and restaurant owners, fans are already choosing where to watch on Sundays. Make sure it's your place. NFL Sunday Ticket gives you every live out-of-market Sunday afternoon game and is only available for your business through EverPass. More games, more reasons to choose your bar, more reasons to come back every week. Be the place fans choose. Only on EverPass.